Very interesting topic here. We're going to talk about military preparedness and readiness. People are so distracted with all the nonsense being thrown at Pete Hegseth. By the way, we need Pete Hegseth more than ever. But is our military ready to fight a war? And why are we sending all of our sophisticated weaponry to a fight against Russia? And why is Russia our enemy? No one can answer that question. Captain John A. Conrad, I think the fifth, if I'm reading this correctly, is our guest right now, proud alumnus of the New York Maritime College, best-selling author, entrepreneur, and U.S. Merchant Marine officer. Captain Conrad, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Charlie. I love the hat.
So Captain, tell us the one thing in particular. We know that military readiness and preparedness is declining. How does that go to something as fundamental and necessary as our ability to build ships?
Our shipbuilding is absolutely in a disaster zone area right now. China has 250 times the shipbuilding capacity of the United States. Even Russia has something like 46 icebreakers. We don't have, our icebreaker program is 10 years behind. We just cannot get those ships built. And this is part of the master plan. And the master plan designed by the neocons, designed by the globalists who control the International Maritime Organization in London, they first went after the U.S. Merchant Marine. And the Merchant Marine's down to 80 ships internationally compared to China's over 5,000. Then they went after the Coast Guard. No one looked at when the hurricane came in North Carolina. What happens when hurricanes come in? Coast Guard, helicopters, big orange birds, land down and rescue. Where were they this time? Mainstream media did not answer that question. That's why, private citizens, patriots had to go in. Well, it's because the 70% of the Coast Guard helicopters were grounded. And now that the Coast Guard's nearly dead, they're going after the Navy. Why is this? Because Navy ships are very expensive. Air Force bombers are very expensive. What they want to build, what the industrial complex wants to build, is they want to build studies, they want to build algorithms, and they want to build very small things that are super expensive, like HIMARS, like Javelin missiles, because that's where the profit is. If you build a ship and you got to put $10 billion into a dry dock, well, you have to hire, thousands of workers, and you got to maintain that dry dock for 10, 20 years. Well, if you just did a study on why the shipbuilding, gave it to McKinsey or Deloitte, why shipbuilding isn't there, you have a $10 billion study, well, you get to pocket $9.9 billion of that, and then you get to do a new study on why it's broken. And better yet, let's give the Army in charge, because when you have thousands of tanks, you can lose that money a lot quicker than if you're building just 10 ships for the same price.
So, Captain, but help me understand. It's not for a lack of resources. Our military budget is nearly $1 trillion. It's $800 billion, not counting all the graft that we send overseas. And so why is it that Russia, which is a poor country, spends about $100 billion a year on defense? In fact, it's $84 billion. So they spend 1/10 of what we spend on defense. Why is it that Russia is able to build ships more efficiently than the United States? Help me understand this.
Well, the number one reason is the bureaucracy, the number of rules and regulations involved with this. So they have two ways that they can control things, and one is to suck all resources out. So that's what happened to my Merchant Marine. We used to be the Department of the Maritime Administration, the commandant in charge of that, used to be bigger than the FAA in DOT. Now it's down to 300 employees in DC working on policy. FAA has over 40,000 employees. So they just suck out, and the media, mainstream media, it doesn't cover shipbuilding. It doesn't cover merchant marine stuff. And where that apathy is, where the ignorance is, it's that's where they can just pull out and pull out shipbuilding. So they pulled out commercial shipbuilding. Navy has, people know the Navy. They can't hide the Navy from mainstream media. So if they want to destroy the Navy and put more money into studies in the Army, like we said, what they have to do is the exact opposite. So FAA has 40,000 people. the shipbuilding and repair arm of the U.S. Navy. It's called NAVSEA. They have 83,000 people employed in that. And those 83,000 people have not delivered one single ship on time and on budget this century. And what they do is
so Captain, I have to how many of them have been fired because of that? Sorry to interrupt, but we have tight breaks here. How many have been fired because of that, Captain?
None have been fired. There's absolutely no accountability for all of this. We just had sabotage of welds at our biggest shipyard, HII, which does our aircraft carriers, our submarines. And not only has no one been fired, but they classify the reason for the sabotage, so we don't even have good info. That's what they do. They classify it, hide it from journalists like you and me, and then there's no accountability.
So Captain, let's go even deeper. Thank you. Of course, there's no accountability. I was with Pete Hegseth this morning, who I think is just amazing. He's thinking about this correctly and creatively. What can he do to fix this on day one? Pick good people. What orders can he do to do something as simple as building ships?
Yeah, I absolutely love Pete. And Mike Waltz is already on that. He's, an Army guy, but he realized this problem, and he's creating the Ships for America Act in Congress and now in the National Security Council. So that's a big part. They got to get Wall Street. And Wall Street money is pouring into China. It's got to be closed off and redirected into the U.S. State Department has to get involved. But what Pete Hegseth has to do first is fire these 83,000 people. Not all of them. Some of them are working on ship repair. But what you have is dozens and dozens of people who walk around in clipboards looking for DEI infractions, looking for health and safety infractions, looking for toxic chemicals inside paints. And you have state people too. California won't let the firefighting foam that we need to get our ships out and safe on the highways. So you just have to cut off these people. Well, they make a change order. And every time you make a change order, it's like the factory in Tesla going down. And if you moved, pieces around every fifth car, it messes up the whole production line. The Ford class carrier had 16,000 change orders. This is what's slowing it down, because all these bureaucrats, DEI, health and safety, some of them are weapons too, but they're all making these change orders. And every time you do it, it just sucks away time. And time is precious in manufacturing, especially heavy manufacturing.
Yeah, and again, this kind of goes down to a fundamental fault error, a first principle error in the military. What does the current military think it exists to do?
Well, they're conquest. So you have to look at the Navy versus the Army. You have to go back to Mahanian principles. This is what Teddy Roosevelt, the Great White Fleet, Teddy Roosevelt, invaded Cuba. He was a colonel, but he was really about the Navy, because the Army goes and it destroys homes, it conquests, it takes over land. So if you want to take over someone and you do an Army. What the Navy does is control trade, control choke points. And this is essential. We see absolute failure of the Navy in the Red Sea. Well, this is helping spark that inflation. Inflation's two things. One is the vast spending these Democrats are doing is absolutely ridiculous. The other is reduction of supply, because the supply chains are broken. So what a Navy does is it controls shipping, it controls trade. And when the Navy has a battle out to sea, no civilians die. But you don't expend those small weapons. You can't control other countries. So the neocons do not want a Navy. They destroyed the Merchant Marine, then the Coast Guard, now the Navy, because they don't want to control trade. They want the globalists to control trade, the big ship owners in Europe, the Chinese shipping. They don't want the Navy, they don't want the Merchant Marine, they don't want U.S. Congress anywhere near this trade, because 90% of all trade goes on the ocean. And especially now that Donald Trump is talking about tariffs, you see papers like Financial Times and economists going absolutely crazy on him. But they don't realize that tariffs are absolutely essential when, you have adversaries. During times of peace, you don't need tariffs. Bring on the free trade. But the enemy gets a vote. Iran, China, Russia, they aren't allowing that free trade. They aren't allowing the ships to go through the choke points, and we don't have a Navy strong enough to support it.
Really quick, Captain, what percentage of our critical infrastructure that we need, such as drones, et cetera, are made in a foreign land? Of what our military uses is not made in America. Do you have an estimation on that?
I don't have an estimation on that, but it's not only the foreign land, it's our allies. China's pulling market share away from shipbuilding, away from South Korea. It's pulling it away from Japan. And every time I watch all the House Armed Services Committee, whenever they give the Navy trouble on this and say, you're not doing good here, the Navy admirals always have the same answer. And they said, our allies are our strength. Well, where are our allies in the Red Sea? Where's Canada? You want missile defense. Those missiles come over the ocean from China and Russia. Canada does not have one single destroyer. That's why the Canadian Navy is not in the Red Sea. We need those allies to do 4%, GDP spending on defense, because the Navy's all alone. And you think, well, we got a large Navy. Well, the Chinese Navy is larger. And when you add in those allies, they don't show up. They haven't showed up in the Red Sea. And the ones that have, France and Italy, have said, we are not going under United States command. They've done their own separate, protect their own ships, because we have all these woke policies and we're protecting everyone's ship. The Navy's protecting Russian and Chinese ships in the Red Sea right
Correct.
now and not protecting U.S. flag ships. And our partners are saying, this is absolutely ridiculous what Jake Sullivan is doing here.
Captain, am I wrong to believe that we are sleepwalking into World War III with Russia?
Absolutely. Russia, China, it's worse than that. It's really worse than that, Charlie. If China takes Taiwan and we decide we are going to do something, we don't have the ships. Everyone thinks you can just put all of this military equipment on aircraft and get it over there. Well, the entire cargo capacity of the entire Air Force, including civilian partners like FedEx and UPS, is less than the cargo capacity of one Chinese mega container ship. And we only have 80 ships merchant marine ships in service. They have 5,000. The Pacific's huge. And everyone thinks you can Berlin airlift. But during the Berlin airlift of Kennedy's time, it was a short hop from Berlin to Western Germany. Now you have to do thousands of miles over the Pacific. So we can't get supplies over. And even if we had 10 times the cargo capacity in the Air Force, where are those aircraft refueling? The air tankers have to refuel at forward air bases in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, Guam, Tinian, those places. Well, you need big oil tankers to deliver that jet fuel over there. The DOD only has access to 10 oil tankers. So we can't possibly get our supplies over there. But what is so dangerous about that is we have 200 to 300,000 servicemen and dependents in South Korea and Okinawa, Japan. We have Japan's army. We can't resupply them without these true things. And if China has air superiority in the thing, if they can shoot down, commercial airlines, well, we don't have the ships to pull these service members out. So it's an enormous problem.
So, Captain, let me ask you, you've talked about the Ukrainian war a lot. What does Trump need to understand if he wants to make peace there? And can a peace deal happen? Is it possible, Captain?
With Russia specifically, are you asking?
Between Russia and Ukraine.
Well, what they don't understand is that Russia they want us to focus on the land war. The mainstream media wants us to focus on the land war, again, because they can sell them tanks, they can sell them Javelin missiles. But that is not Putin's main concern. That Crimea is the choke point. It is Russia's New Orleans. So you have the entire inland waterway system of Russia is vast. It moves 70 million tons of cargo and 17 million people a year. And all of those rivers and the Caspian Sea, they all come down through Crimea to get out to market. So, Vladimir Putin, when the Ever Given blocked the Suez Canal, he said they were putting billions of dollars into this inland waterway system because all of their agriculture, a lot of their oil, all comes down these rivers. And so this war would have been very easy to stop Putin early on. You take out that Crimea bridge, you close down the waterway, and that's what chokes the economy of Russia. They would have came to the bargaining table very quick. But Jake Sullivan said, no, we are not attacking that Crimea bridge. We are not stopping them. The Ukrainians tried to shell barge traffic from Mariupol. But if you see the map now, it's all along that Sea of Azov, because that is the point that Putin wants. He is worried about NATO closing down this waterway and absolutely putting a chokehold on the economy. And this is why mainstream media and Jake Sullivan have not told you about the importance of the bridge. And the Navy thinks they've more of a descent sinking of ships, but they do not want your attention on the volume of traffic coming down this waterway. So that's one lever that Trump, has, that if you don't listen, Putin, we will shut down that waterway. We will send the missiles and blow up that bridge. That's just my suggestion.
Everybody, thanks so much for watching. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the bell. We're doing so much good work here at Turning Point USA. Also, get your tickets to AmFest. That's amfest.com, the biggest party of the year in Phoenix Convention Center. We have Tucker Carlson and really big speakers coming. I'll be there. It's going to be unbelievable. Meet your future husband, future wife. It's going to be great. Amfest.com, amfest.com. Get there. Go get the tickets. It's going to be amazing. And again, please subscribe and hit this bell. We appreciate it. And if you listen to audio podcasts, subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast. That's Charlie Kirk Show podcast. We won, everybody. We won. I need to get this hat. Daisy, can you get me one of these hats? We won. And if you guys want a limited edition signed MAGA hat right here, last thing I'll say is become a member, members.charliekirk.com, to get a limited edition MAGA hat. We have 5,000 to send out, don't we, Daisy?
Over, like 8,000 now.
We have 8,000 hats I have to sign. 8,000 hats. God bless.